items of interest regarding all modes of transportation in the city of Oshkosh, including motor, transit, and bike and pedestrian. We are an advisory committee, and our favorable recommendations today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council as needed. The council can accept or reject any recommendation from the committee.
Can you turn your microphone, please? Thank you.
So if you don't agree with our decision, you can discuss the item with any council member. If the committee does not recommend an item, a common council member may sponsor a new ordinance regarding this item. All ordinance items require 2 readings before the council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, January 23rd at 6 p.m. And you'll be allowed to comment on the item at that time, though the council will not take a vote and won't take action. On Tuesday, February 13th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading, at which time the council will take action. You will again be allowed to speak. This afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you'd like to speak, please step up to the podium and give your name and address. I do ask you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item. The item will then come back to the committee for discussion and action as necessary. Now, the committee has adopted a public participation policy which provides 15 minutes for public comment. Citizens must provide their name and address and speak on matters related to transportation issues within their authority. Comment should be addressed to the committee members and not to staff. Items on the agenda should be addressed at the time the item is read, not during the open period for public comment. Statements are limited to 3 minutes, and citizens may only provide comment one time, unless permission is granted otherwise. Written comments sent to the city will be distributed to the committee members and become part of the public record. So with that, please call the roll.
Staple?
Here.
Armstrong?
Here.
Erickson?
Here.
Merritt?
Here.
Hartman?
Here. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the December meeting? No, November meeting.
Yeah.
November meeting, sorry.
Yeah.
We didn't have a meeting in December. Do we have a motion?
Evelyn.
Evelyn moves. Do we have a second?
Erickson.
Lindsay seconds. Any discussion, additions, corrections? If not, call the roll, please.
Staple?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Erickson?
Aye.
Merritt?
Aye.
Hartman?
Aye. We have no old business, is that correct? Except we're going to have to do a little discussion later about the Wisconsin street and just the traffic. All right. So new business, clean up parking ordinance on, I don't even know how to say that. I don't even know where that street is.
Pinoqua, so that's over by where Lakeshore Golf Course was now, the new park and the new Four Seasons building. Just when we were updating some things around that area, my guys noticed that there's some old ordinances that are no longer relevant. So this one would be deleting the 90-degree angle parking on that street, which again, it was back from when it was a golf course. So there's one area there, and then there's also a no parking area that we can delete. So those are both no longer relevant with the new Four Seasons building and the development of that area. So it's just cleaning up the ordinance, deleting a couple things that aren't needed anymore.
All right. Do we need separate motions on those two, or can we do them together?
No, I think we can do them together since they're listed.
Okay. So can we have a motion to accept the cleanup of parking ordinances?
On 1 and 2.
1 and 2, yes.
So moved.
Jim moves. Do we have a second?
Second.
Jeff seconds. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Staple?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Erickson?
Aye.
Merritt?
Aye.
And Hartman?
Aye.
Can I ask a question on the number 2 one?
Yeah.
Delete except for the right turn from eastbound New York onto North Main?
Yeah, so number 2, that's so this is related to the intersection of New York, North Main, and
Yeah.
Harrison. It currently, right-hand turns are prohibited at that intersection, except in the ordinance it currently says except for the right turn from eastbound New York onto North Main. However, when they redid that intersection, that right turn is prohibited. So this is deleting that exception, I guess is
Okay.
the cleanest way to say it. Yeah.
So I mean, it seems like there was more than just, all of them were prohibited, right?
Right, so yep, all of them are now
So that's gonna be
prohibited.
100%, you can turn right on,
So now
Yeah.
now all the right turns are prohibited.
oh, all of them are
Yeah.
prohibited.
Right.
Previously, before they redid the
Okay.
intersection, you could turn right from eastbound New York to North Main. So how the ordinance read was the right hands were prohibited, and then it lists all the directions, and then it had that language that says except for the right turn from eastbound New York onto
Oh.
North Main. And that too, when my guys are out there working, they're like, well, that's prohibited, so we should probably get that out of the ordinance.
Yeah. Yeah, they signed okay, so it's totally 100%
Yep.
prohibited no matter where you are.
Right.
Good to know.
Okay,
I still agree.
all right. Can we have a motion on that, please?
I thought we just voted on both of them, but I can.
Yeah,
Okay, please do.
Okay, sure. Number 2.
Number, yeah,
It's the
number
cleanup.
2, yep,
I'll second.
all right. Jim moves, Evelyn seconds. I assume no further discussion on that? Okay with that? Call the roll, please.
Staple,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Merritt,
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye. Okay. Item number 3, request no parking on Congress Avenue north side from Jackson Street to 104 feet west of Jackson Street. Current condition, no parking from Jackson Street to 50 feet west of Jackson Street.
All right.
Citizens request, so we have comments on this,
We do.
Yep.
please? Please,
Yeah.
and please give your name and address.
Hello, my name is Susan Werbo. I live at 422 Congress Avenue and have for the last 54 years. They recently built a beautiful new school, as I'm sure you're all well aware, and Congress Avenue runs directly into the back of that school. It seems that most of the teachers are parking in teachers' parking lots, but on Congress there seems to be 3 cars that park in front of our house regularly, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But the person who parks closest to Jackson Street, there's not very much leeway when you turn the corner there, especially if there's someone in the right-hand lane going to turn left. And it happened to us. We were going to make a left-hand turn. A kid came around the corner quite rapidly, had to decide, was he going to hit that car, was he going to hit us, or could he make it through? And luckily, obviously, he made it through. But I think it's just an accident waiting to happen. And if you move that no parking one driveway over, I think that problem would be completely taken care of. That's it. Any questions?
No. Any other comments on this item?
No, I'm Tom Werblow. I live at the same address, 422 Congress, and I agree with what Sue just said, that I think it's a dangerous situation and it could easily be rectified.
Yeah, so, all right, so I'll show you. So basically what we're talking about is currently it's prohibited for 50 feet, which was just to clear the intersection, but so we're proposing to prohibit parking on the north side to 104 feet, which would take it, to past this driveway. I guess
Past the first driveway or the second
the
one?
first one. So
Okay,
right about
so it'd be a
here.
little spot right there.
So there would be room for maybe a compact car here, but it does clear
Okay.
the intersection. Yeah, and I'm not sure, I've observed that a few different days, and there is a car that's parking like right here, which is really close, and it does get really tight there, that intersection. And I did reach out to the school district and did ask them to communicate that to their staff again, because when they built the school, obviously they built a parking lot big enough to accommodate their staff, and ask them if you could please remind them to park in their off-street parking lot, which they said they would do, but, again, we can't prevent people from parking where parking is allowed, so, I don't know, my thought was it's either a staff member or it could be somebody that's renting in that area, but either way, that,
It's staff, because they park and they go in the backside of the school.
okay.
Sorry.
So, yeah, so that, it does make sense though to move it down here, like we said, it's not like there's plenty of parking in the area, so.
Okay.
So I would agree with the recommendation to move that past that driveway. This would be 104 feet.
All right, can we have a motion on that?
So move.
Evelyn
I'll
moves,
second.
Jim, okay, Jim moves, Evelyn seconds.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the day I went to look at that area, there was a car parked right near the end of that street, and it clearly was not a good situation, so I think this is a good
That's a
idea.
narrow street.
It is.
And it's a throughway. I use that
Yeah.
frequently to avoid the lights on New York and stuff, so.
Any other discussion?
And I would also just like to compliment Mr. Collins on his response to my problem here. I mean, he was right out there measuring and looking and taking pictures, obviously. And I was very impressed with that.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Jim.
We'll put that in the minutes.
It should be.
Right. Can we do a roll call?
Steeple?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Merritt?
Aye.
Hartman?
Aye.
What about Lindy?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Eric?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Be careful out there.
You too.
All right. We're reviewing the potential layout of Bowen Street. from
Yeah,
East Parkway to Otter.
So I'll give you I'm just going to introduce Steve from AECOM and Jessica from AECOM. And then we have Justin Garrick, who's our city engineer that's working with them on this project. So that's about, I guess I'll let you guys take it from there. So you want to give them some background, Justin? You want Steve to do that?
Yeah, so I guess what we're looking for today is really just AECOM is going to quick kind of go through a presentation, just giving kind of a little bit of an update about what the project is, where it's happening. This is being partially funded through state, being let through the state. So as a part of that, there needs to be public involvement and things like that. So this is kind of the starting point of us just bringing you kind of the project and just looking for feedback. There's no action items on this, just kind of open discussion about what we've got going on here and things we can do in this corridor.
When was I thought Bowen was redone, well, of course, my memory is poor, so while I've been here in the last 45 years, I thought it was done sometime in that time period. Not?
Do you remember looking at when was this?
This piece of Bowen was done in '69.
Okay.
Yeah.
1969.
All right, I wasn't here then.
It's beyond 45 years.
So, go ahead.
Good. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Jim.
Yep. What year is it again that you're looking at the reconstruction?
For construction,
Yeah,
27.
27,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So we just want to run through a brief overview, some existing conditions within the corridor and things we can look at, and then throw some conceptual ideas out there for enhancements within the corridor and try to get some feedback if we should move forward with some of these items or not. Like mentioned before, our project design began in the fall with our survey and extends through 26 with construction scheduled in 27. Go ahead. A few things. 69 was the original construction. The right-of-way is approximately 49 feet with the roadway width of 34, which is basically a 10-foot parking lane on the west side and then two 12-foot lanes, north and south. There's city utilities in there, sanitary, storm, water, and lighting, plus a bunch of other private utilities and communication stuff on light poles and below ground, and all those are scheduled to be, especially the city utilities are scheduled to be replaced and upgraded. There's no transit on the corridor, although the buses cross the intersections at Otter and Parkway on both ends of the corridor. There's a traffic signal at Merritt, an existing system that we're going to take a look at. We're going to do some counts coming up in February once the UW school gets back in session. We'll put some counts out there, do a quick warrant analysis to see if those are still warranted, and go from there, whether it's a new signal system or some other alternative. There's about 5,000 vehicles on the corridor and about 3.5% trucks. And then, of course, a couple of things we're going to be looking at today. This section, or Bowen Street, is included in the city bicycle plan for consideration of adding, bike facilities. As Justin mentioned, as part of the project and the portion of the design we're in now, we're leaning into our environmental documentation analysis and phase, and that's where we start getting input from the public. So we did, some demographics through the corridor. Obviously, it's a heavily residential section with some commercial and institutional parcels. 15% are people of color, and about 14% living in poverty. 20% of the adjacent residents have a disability. A lot of the people that live in the corridor are renters versus owners, and there's a bunch of community facilities, schools, churches, and social service agencies within the corridor that we're going to reach out and get feedback from on things to enhance the corridor moving forward. So the purpose and need of the project, we need to maintain the utility of Bowen Street for all motor vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists, basically all users of the facility. The pavement has reached its useful life. It's 31, 50, 40 years old. There's a lack of formal facilities for bikes. There's inconsistent pedestrian facilities, broken sidewalks. A lot of the ADA ramps aren't compliant with current standards. We're going to take a look at the on-street parking, whether it's used or not used. And then, like I mentioned before, all the city utilities within the corridor, underground, sanitary, storm, and water are being upgraded and replaced. So some of our design constraints and considerations, we need to maintain or improve the safety for all users or travelers within the corridor, avoid or minimize impacts to the private property. Right now, like I mentioned, the right-of-way is at 49 feet, which is basically right behind the existing sidewalk. And the plan is to not encroach beyond the proposed back of walk is going to be the existing back of walk. We might have to obtain some limited easements to do some grading behind there, but we're not anticipating purchasing any property from any parcel owner within the corridor. We need to maintain the traffic operations, and like I mentioned before, look at the parking. Improve the walking conditions for everyone, including the people with disabilities, because there's, we know the numbers within the corridor. Better accommodate bicycle travel, and then we strive for cost effectiveness in construction and future operations, so this corridor will last a long time. So this is where we're at within the project schedule. We just submitted our 30% plan, which is very preliminary. It's just a basic layout. There's no changes to the configuration, the back of sidewalk and the lanes, and everything stays the same. So that's under review now. The pavement design is done and should be going to the region for review this week. So then we're in our draft environmental documentation, preliminary plan, 60% plan phase, where we start to get feedback on if we want to incorporate any different or improved alternatives or concepts within the corridor. And then, of course, the rest of the project schedule is if we need land acquisition, like I mentioned, the easements, that's going to be done. Our document or vehicle to purchase those will be done in May of 25, or actually acquisition by then. Our vehicle will be done this fall. And then our 90% plan's due in May of 26 with a DOT, a WISDOT DOT PS&E of August 1st for construction in 27. So this gets into some of the concepts that we took a look at. This is a typical section. If you look at the road as a loaf of bread, a typical section is just one slice anywhere within that corridor that you're looking at it at a 90-degree angle. So the top typical is existing condition, like I mentioned before. There's a 10-foot parking lane on the west side or the left side, and then two 12-foot driving lanes. Now right now there's no accommodations or markings for bikes, which could easily be done with the markings we can put in and maintain the typical section and have that bike facility as a shared lane on the travel lane for the roadway. The second alternative, the second from the top, is where we actually eliminate the parking on the west side and convert that width of lane into bicycle lanes one on the west side, one on the east side, and then just maintain the two 12-foot driving lanes. Third typical is using, and we'll show you in a little bit on a couple of graphics, potentially adding some traffic calming features, which we're calling bump outs within the corridor. It'll take away some parking, but it'll add, a safety factor at some of the intersections and in between. And then it'll give us a little more green area within the corridor, because the terrace area in most cases is a 2-foot grass strip. And in some cases on the commercial property, it's all concrete. And then the last version is, I guess, the full bump out, where we're using that entire parking lane as a grassed area. This wouldn't be straight across the board, it would just be in locations, and we have a graphic showing that. And then again, we would have the shared bike lanes along with the travel lanes. So this is what we're calling, our bump out areas. It's basically adding green space, traffic calming measures also, but it would eliminate the parking area wherever we denote or decide to install these bump out areas. And then traffic in those cases, the traffic lane would be directly adjacent to both curb lines going northbound and southbound. It's currently northbound only is like that. It has the advantages of standardizing the corner treatments, and it shortens the pedestrian crossings. It also improves the sight distance because it moves that stop bar closer to Bowen and around some of the obstacles such as houses and or trees. Another thing that the city asked us to look at was the potential vacation of the Mill Street section between Wagoo and School or Bowen, either or. The first one that's labeled existing is basically just the existing condition. That's putting it back exactly the way it is. The second one on the right, Alt 1, in the blue, is maintaining or converting all of that roadway space into green space. The blue actually would be grassed areas, or in the case of what's out there now, the planting area is maintained by a local park association or group that, this would enhance that area or expand those areas for greenery to the corridor. It has, it extends the driveways of those 3 parcels out to Bowen, but it eliminates the movement, the traffic movement from Bowen to Mill Street to Wagoo. Alt 2 on the bottom is just a little bit of enhancement. With Wagoo being a one-way up to Bowen, and then it converts back to 2-way east of Bowen, we thought maybe to eliminate some of the maybe confusion or double laneage there, we would take out that northbound lane and just have one lane coming from Mill Street or Wagoo through to Bowen, onto Bowen to the east. Again, the green space and the driveways remain the same. And then the third alternative is we would still, none of the previous 2 alternatives supplied the movement from Bowen onto Mill Street to continue onto Mill Street to the south. The third alternative in the red, we added a slip lane so that movement is maintained, so you could get from Bowen onto Mill and go south on Mill Street. Again, all that colored area would be green space that could be maintained by community groups or whatnot as planting areas or things that they might want to do with it. Anything else? Okay. This we took a quick look, and we'll bring this up. We have another graphic, a long plot of the whole thing. We did obtain crash data for the corridor, and as you can see, there's a cluster of accidents, mostly property damage only, failure to yield and side swipes and things going on at the Wagoo Mill Street intersection. And basically there's poor sight distance, or there's the sight distance very minimal or right on the border, because that house in that little triangle piece where that stop bar is located. The sight distance just gets past that house. So if this is one of the areas, if we did extend a bump out in that corner on Bowen, that you would pull that stop bar closer to Bowen and improve that sight distance. Pull up the PDF. It should be on the bottom. Okay, so could we expand that a little bit or not?
Maybe you need to zoom in. Where do you want me to go?
Probably the whole thing for initially. Just can be a little bigger.
Well,
So
you
this
can get it
this
much
is the
bigger,
whole
but-
corridor, and what we did here is the green areas, and this one shows the Mill Street alternative as existing condition. We didn't put any of the other alternatives on there yet. So the green areas are areas that we, I guess at this time, are proposing for bump out areas. They're either no parking areas right now, and those are labeled, or they're maybe not utilized areas or stalls that could be converted to a terrace area to provide, like I said, traffic calming and or some more green space and a buffer between the pedestrian traffic and the vehicle traffic on the corridor. If you just want to pop in there and just go through the alternatives, Jess.
Sure.
So then these, like I said, these are just the alternatives we looked at, again, with the Mill Street removal. It's all conceptual, it's all up for discussion. This are just conceptual layouts. And like I said, most of these will add quite a bit of green space area to be used or enhanced by, community groups or things like that. Okay, pan out a little bit. And as we move down the corridor, there's just some more areas of bump outs on that west side. This bump out area on the east side, city staff Justin and Matt had mentioned that maybe we should look at potentially providing a wider buffer at the school and the church areas, and that's what we're showing here. Pretty much from school over to, if you want to pan out and do the whole thing. From Trinity School up through the church, it would provide a wider terrace or grass terrace area. We'd shift traffic over to the west. We'd lose parking on that block between school and Winnebago. So you'd just have your two traffic lanes in there, but then we'd provide the buffer space between traffic in the school and in the church area, and then come back to the existing laneage lines once we get to the Washington Avenue intersection. And then continuing on, we're just showing on the west side, other buffer or bump out areas that potentially could be incorporated. Again, some of those are no parking areas already. And then some of them, just would add that buffer and green space within the corridor. And like I said, we took a look at the crash analysis or crash data at Wagoo and Bowen. We have the crash data for the entire corridor, which we'll take a look at these other intersections to see if there's any clusters, and potentially some of those bump out areas could help sight distance in those areas too. Questions? Feedback?
So the spot where you're gonna get rid of where the small island is, you'll extend to a larger green space and get rid of part of Mill Street? Looks like there's 3 houses there that would have to extend their driveways out farther?
Correct.
And that property would be owned by the city, the green space?
There was no.
It would still be considered public right of way because there's still going to be large sanitary sewer interceptor, storm sewer, and water main that runs through that corridor. So the right of way line on what would be the west side of Mill would not change. It would be no different than having a large terrace.
are the owners responsible for that large terrace then?
Certainly would have to be up for conversation.
And then will they be assessed to extend their driveway out to the,
Depends on what the special assessment policy is at the time that this gets constructed.
So they'll be addressed, you'll be talking to those homeowners.
Absolutely, it's all
Yes.
part of this
Yeah, 'cause
process.
that's like doubling their driveway.
Yep.
And a day like this, you don't want that.
True.
well, more the cost, though, if you're gonna assess them to do that, that's a pretty major cost.
No, I would anticipate, I mean, certainly the current assessment policy would state that the property owner is responsible to maintain, whether it's replacing or not, their driveway apron. But I would, under these circumstances, I think we would look to try to work with doing something as a part of that.
So with the bump outs, I was confused about what happens with the bike lanes at that point.
With the bump outs, well, if you do happen to go with bump outs, then you're probably looking at a shared lane between bikes and vehicles, because you're taking away that parking
Right.
lane area to use for a bike lane. And then right now, it's not painted with a symbol or anything, but that's something we could consider doing. Whether it's we're maintaining the existing typical section, roadway width, or we're doing bump outs and other stuff, we could mark it as a shared lane.
And the bicycle and pedestrian master plan does indicate facilities to be on this corridor for bicycle facilities. So at a minimum, I think everything stays status quo. We would look to add sharrows as a part of the project to kind of designate the bike lanes as being the sharrows.
So if we did designated bike lanes, then we would not be able to do the bump outs? And it, depending on which side.
Right, because right now, essentially the 10-foot parking lane would be split with the 5 feet bike lanes on both sides. So it's either parking or those designated marked bike lanes.
You use the phrase, or the word calming traffic. Help me understand how the bump outs calm traffic.
Typically, when drivers are driving closer to something, say a grassed area or a curb, they move slower because they don't want to hit it. Same as a roundabout.
Like Main Street, right?
What's it?
Like Main Street.
Yeah. If things are more or seem more constricted, they're going to slow down from site to site.
Have you seen any need for like left turn lanes at all along this corridor, like designated middle left turn lane?
I highly doubt it, but we didn't look at it yet. I mean, we could take a look at it. Like I said, we're going to do the Merritt Avenue crash or traffic counts coming up. I would think that one would be the most likely to need something, if anything, but we can certainly take a look at it.
And I think what you're referring to is kind of what we've done on several projects throughout the years, is kind of the road diet,
The twiddle.
the
twiddle.
middle left turn lane.
Yeah.
With this corridor already only having the 2 lanes, I think it would be difficult to try and add a middle left turn lane into it.
Yeah.
Did anybody look at the streets that go from 2-way to 1-way, just continuing on it 2-way? And what that would do? Would that make things better or worse? Is it even feasible? 'Cause I don't know if all the accidents happened there because we were going from 2-way to 1-way streets. If it just continued on as 2-way.
So this project would actually only touch one of the 1-ways. It would be the Wagoo intersection.
And I guess the reason I'm asking is if not now, are we building something that precludes that in the future, if that would be a consideration that would make things better?
To convert it to 2-way?
To convert it to 2-way.
Okay.
You know, if
Yeah, yeah.
sometime in the future, we're doing anything here, if when they looked at that, if that would be the smart thing to do, are we doing anything here that would preclude that?
Realistically, so really you've got the 1-way pairs of CP and Otter, and then you've got the 1-way Wagoo, which continues eastbound. That's kind of the 3 1-ways in that area. I know Transportation Director Collins has had requests over the years to look at and or possibly try to switch those from 1-ways to 2-ways and what that would do. it would actually be a relatively significant investment to be able to try to create those as two ways, namely centered around the railroad tracks, because the crossings are only set up going one way right now. The railroad might not even allow having a two-way crossing at those locations. So, not saying it could never happen, but I just don't foresee in any short-term, even a medium-term solution would be creating those as a two-way stretches because of the challenges of trying to retrofit some of the areas into the two-way. Additionally, the Main Street intersection was set up in 2010 with that reconstruction as those being one-ways, so all of those intersections would have to get redone, Main and each of the three respective intersections. So significant investments to try to take on that challenge. I don't know if we've ever really looked more in depth than that, but
well, the main, in my opinion, the main drawback on it is the time to have done that probably would have been when we redid Main Street, because now all those
And I asked
intersections are
when
done
we
there.
were redoing
Yeah.
Main Street if they could become two ways. So I'm going to try again.
So that would have been, because like Justin said, those are the two major hurdles. Are that, well, there's one other one, but the major is the intersections of Main A and then the railroad B. But historically, I looked back, and last time that they proposed that, there was a lot of public feedback on parking and losing parking, and it was very unpopular. Got very controversial, as parking is, and it basically died.
Okay.
And there was some data that shows that in some cases one-ways are safer, but anyway, because of those three things, the potential loss of parking that residents were very opposed to, and then more recently the reconstruction of Main Street, and then the railroad issues, like Justin said, it's not a never, but it would be very challenging and expensive.
And this section of Wagoo will be reconstructed next year, right? Will
This
that go
year.
up? It's 2024.
it is 2024, so
Yeah.
yes, it will
Okay.
be constructed this year up to the intersection of Mill here.
Okay.
And if you go to the green space, obviously just from this picture, you can see cars parked in front of those three houses. If you go to the green space,
The other way?
and extend their driveways, will they have parking on Bowen? Doesn't look like it to me, but
No, the intent was not to have parking along that stretch.
okay.
But they would have access to those driveways, no matter where they are. You could put a bunch of sidewalks or whatever in there. They could park their vehicles
Yeah, the
Yes.
driveways are
as close to
extended.
Bowen as they want
Yep.
on their driveway.
Yep. And then, yeah, and all these alternatives, and one thing that came up, they'll have double sidewalks, because we extended the sidewalk around whole, on both sides, the whole triangle, just to maintain the continuity along Bowen, so they're not crossing back and forth. So the existing sidewalk on Mill is maintained, but then we're also putting a new one along Bowen on all the
So then they
alternatives.
would be responsible for that extra sidewalk and snow removal and
Again, I think all that would need to get vetted out without having any other internal conversations. My gut reaction is the sidewalk that would be along Bowen would probably something that the city would look to potentially try to maintain during winter time, things like that, because you're adding a fair amount of sidewalk, and that's not, we're not trying to make it an inconvenience for the residents. We're trying to really make the corridor safer. And if there's a little bit of sidewalk that we'd have to maintain, it's something that we'd have to investigate further.
And to Jim's comment about parking always being controversial, we'll be talking to the bars and the businesses along there and see how they feel about if parking being removed is an issue, is a consideration. At some point, they'll be contacted for input.
Yes, and that's
Okay.
part of the public involvement process we're starting up now. We're reaching out, we got the web page set up on the city's site, and there's a link to the Bowen information. I think there's also a link now where they can actually start submitting comments, and we'll probably post up different alternatives depending on what we move forward with, along with having public meetings, and reach out to people within, both owners and people living in renters living within the corridor.
So, as I understand it, the two big issues are, one, what to do with that intersection with Mill Street. And I agree that's a nasty intersection. I drive by there regularly and don't care for it. but I don't live there, so it's not my problem. The other is bike lanes versus bump outs, and the question is.
parking.
And
And
parking.
parking.
And parking,
Yep.
correct. So you're losing parking on the west side, because there's no parking on the east side of Bowen now anyway. So those are the main issues. Do we have any data to indicate that we need traffic calming on Bowen? Do we have data to show that that's a particularly, people drive there particularly fast? I'm not asking for an answer today. I'm just laying out, as I think about the issue, if we don't need traffic calming, I prefer to have bike lanes. So if we need traffic calming for safety purposes, obviously that will trump a bike lane. So I'm just looking for, when we get to some point to have to make a final call, what data do we have to indicate which way we should go? Any other comments on presentation?
Is there anything else specific you guys need, or is that kind of, you kind of got what you're looking for? I agree
Yeah,
with
I think so.
what Al said. Those are, I think, the two main things. And it sounds like, they're looking for a little more data on that, and then you heard the comments on the intersection. I guess it's up to you if you guys want anything more specific from the group, or.
Yeah, I mean, we could potentially look at doing a speed study within the corridor. Well, like I said, we'll take a look at the crash data at the other intersections to see if there's anything goofy going on at any of those other intersections, or in between, actually, as far as even pedestrians' safety. But yeah, definitely a speed study or something would tell us, what vehicles are traveling at within the corridor.
And I agree with that. Just my 2 cents on that intersection. I mean, the crash data does support doing something there, but I agree with what kind of the committee was saying too. I mean, it's going to impact those few houses the most, so I guess you got to get their input on what their
Right.
opinion is on it.
And that's, yeah, like I said, that's where we start. We're in the process, to the point where we need to start getting feedback from
And you said
the
you're going
owners
to
and
get
renters.
some traffic volumes too on that to see if, that was my other thought with the presentation, is just see if that slip lane is justified, or if it's needed, or if it's not needed based on traffic counts.
The one that we're showing here?
The one, that we were talking,
For the,
alternative 3 had that slip lane,
Yeah.
where you could go through
for the,
to Mill, whether that was
to
needed
maintain
or
that
not.
movement.
I mean, that'd be another piece of data,
Yeah.
just say, well, it's not needed.
I mean, basically, yeah, we're setting up a camera at Merritt in early February for a week. I mean, we could let it sit out here for a couple days after that and see what kind of movements we got going there too. So that's something we can take a look at.
One more question I just thought of, related to transit and the transit development plan. Is there any potential that we would have a route go along Bowen, or would we just maintain at the intersections?
We're working on that now. I don't recall this area, we'll have to look at it, but I don't recall that being on the current plan. But we're actually working with our consultant now on potentials for a couple route changes, but I don't recall this being one.
All right, any other comments? Okay. Thank you. Nice presentation.
Thanks.
That's clear.
Thanks. Yeah, and this will come back. If we would propose bike lanes, obviously this would come back to the committee, but either way, as we go forward, we will report back to the committee in progress and get it back here at some point, I'm sure.
Okay, great. Next item on the agenda, the bid city parking lot proposal.
All right, and Mr. Staple can add to this conversation as well, as he's a member of the bid board and has a long history with the parking issues. But the bid, which is a downtown business district, they've requested that some of the permit stalls in the downtown parking lots be converted to free 2-hour parking stalls. They observed, and they're correct, that our permit stalls are we probably have too many permit stalls and not enough short-term free stalls. So I kind of gave you a chart. Currently the city sells I'm just averaging maybe 40 to 80. I think maybe at one point there was maybe 80. Now there's probably currently more in the 50 range. The permits are basically, we could call it like a hunting permit. So you can park in any permitted stall in any of the lots with a permit. And those are $30 a month. Some of those are in desirable areas for short-term parking. So we're initially proposing converting about 100, just over 100 of those stalls from permit to 2-hour, and there's still going to be quite a few more parking stalls available. Or that way there'll be more for customers, and it'll be revenue neutral for the city. So that's part of the proposal. The other issue is that, or not issue, but the other proposal is there's always been an issue with employees and or business owners parking in the stalls in the downtown parking lots, and they either move their car every so often, or if there's not enforcement, then I guess they don't have to worry about it. But the other idea that they had was that businesses could lease a specific stall for $50 a month, or $500 a year, so you get a little bit of a discount if you did it yearly. And they think this would be real attractive for business owners, so then they could have a reserved spot or two so them and or their employees could park there, and the city would generate some revenue. They believe that from their discussions that they'd be highly desirable. And then, like I said, I would move some employees and tenants to those stalls and then free up some of the more of the short-term stalls. Enforcement now is done by the police department, by their community service officers as their resources allow, or on a complaint basis. So it's understood with the bid that there would be some self-policing that would have to take place with those. Obviously, if they had somebody in that stall, then they could call the police for enforcement. But what we would do is we would get the standard city parking lot signs, and it would just say, instead of a permit space, it would say 24-hour lease stall for Jim's shop or whatever it would be, but it would standard block letters, standard signage. So the bid's pretty excited about that proposal. So our next step, they approved it at their last meeting, was to take it to this committee to get your input. And if you agree with it, then it would go to the council after that. So I don't know.
The only thing I would add is these lease stalls are going to be coming out of where the permit ones are. So they are generally the least desirable. They're on the edges of the parking lot, the farthest away from the buildings, because we're trying to keep all of the really desirable parking available for customers. The other thing it would allow is some businesses require more than 2 hours for their customers. It's hard for me to make the recommendation with my hair, but apparently if you get a lot done with your hair, it takes more than 2 hours to do. So that would be something, if a salon had one or two of those that they purchased, they could tell their customers that are coming for something a long time, you could park there. We felt it was a win-win, because it's taking some underutilized or unutilized assets and giving it, so if you want to make sure you have a spot every day, you've got it. It's still, there aren't long distances anywhere to walk. So it's still close enough that it's convenient for you. It raises money for the city. It frees up some more parking for customers that come down. We saw it all as wins all the way around.
And that's gonna affect all these lots that are behind businesses.
Yeah, so I gave you this was our initial thought, or our initial proposal. It would be the lots in the downtown business corridor, so it would be basically the ones south of Main Street up to the 500 block of Main Street. So you're looking at the 200 through the 500 blocks, those parking lots that are back in the businesses. Each of those lots would have the potential for some leased stalls, and it would free up some additional 2-hour spaces, and every lot's gaining 2-hour spaces. And the majority of the lots would gain some lease spaces. A couple of them would not. That would be the State Street lot and the 500 West, which are both pretty small. Committee didn't feel like there was enough room, but that could change as well. However, we thought this was a good starting point. From talking with the bid, they think those 42 stalls are going to be snapped up pretty quickly, and then we maybe look at adding some more leased stalls. But I think between the leased and the permit stalls, that there's some flexibility where, you know, we could convert some of the permit stalls to leased stalls if there was additional demand. I know some of the apartment owners have some demand already for some of these leased stalls that would like to purchase them, you know, as soon as they're available, as well as a couple of businesses. So,
Yes, the other thing I'd add is with the lease stalls, they're generally around the edge of the parking lot for days like today, when you've got to come in and plow, so you don't have somebody parked right in the middle of where you plow.
Sure.
So the spaces are chosen for a bunch of reasons.
So Jim, for this proposal, and I support this thing. I think it's a great idea. You don't have to come back to us if you want to convert something from a lease to a permit. I mean, that would seem to be crazy to me. But
no, I don't think so. I think that if we go with this, proposal, then yeah, I don't think that would be needed. I think that basically what we're saying is that you agree with converting some of the 2-hour spaces, or some of the permit spaces to the 2-hour spaces. That would get done first. You know, we would change the signage, and that you agree with the program of leasing stalls at the $50 a month or the $500 a year. And if you do, and we have more demand than current spaces, we would look to take from the permit stalls,
Right.
unless it becomes an issue, and then we would bring it back. You know, some of the things we talked about, we were gonna have initial leases for 3-month minimums, so we're not out there constantly changing signs. The stalls would be leased first come, first serve per calendar month. And we were looking at maybe a tentative start date for March 1st. That would give us time to get through council and then give us time to get the program set up. And the other thing, some people, or not some, but at least one business owner thought maybe that was too much. However, our counter to that is that you can still buy a permit for $30 a month. If you don't want to pay the $50 for a lease stall, get a permit, and then you can park any of the permit spaces, and then, you know, you're saving money. That way there has to be some value, though, to having the dedicated stall versus the permit stall. So that was the price differentiation. And this also solves another issue with when the 400 East lot was reconstructed. There is a current agreement with some of those business owners where they have, if you look at the back, there's some leased stalls in the 400 East that are permanently leased currently. That agreement expires in December of this year. So this also solves that issue because it'll give them an opportunity, if they want to keep those stalls, they won't be free any longer, but they can lease them for $50 a month. So that'll
Or at least lease the stall. I don't know,
Right.
because location may change, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, unless they get there first, and then they can, yeah. So it'd give them the opportunity too, if they still want a dedicated stall, they just have to pay for it now versus now with the agreement, they're free.
so that's why there's so many permit stalls in that parking lot.
Yep.
Ah.
Yeah, there was an agreement, and this was before my time, but the gist of it is that there's that alley that runs behind them.
Yep.
And the city needed some of that land for the parking lot, and they lost some of the areas where they parked. So back, you know, whenever that was, 15 years ago, I think it was 15 years. So they got a 15-year lease agreement where they would get those stalls for 15 years.
Well, that explains something. Do we have a motion on this?
So moved.
Jim moves. Do we have a
Second.
second? Lindsay seconds. Any other discussion on this? And so basically the motion is approving the general concept of creating more 2-hour slots and doing a lease versus permit. And the number of each of those will really, you know, you'll manage that. You won't, I don't see you coming back here unless you have to significantly reduce the number of 2-hour parking. And I don't think that's going to happen because it's not in the business's best interest.
Right.
So, all right, do we have any other discussion on this? Are we ready to vote? Could you call the roll, please?
Staple,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Merritt,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
All right. Jim, we have staff statements on,
Yeah, so I just have a couple things. tonight, the council will be voting on, we have a proposal to add a morning tripper route to Oshkosh North High School. We currently, about 2 years ago, we added one in the afternoon, and it's been pretty successful. But we knew at that time that we might have to look at the morning as well, because the buses, due to demand, are very crowded going to and from north. So we talked to the school district, and they agree with our proposal to add a morning tripper as well as an afternoon, and they share in that cost. After our grants, then we each pay half of that. So we have a tentative agreement pending council approval. It worked really well, like I said, in the afternoon, and it balances out the students and the other passengers. Right now, in the morning, and it used to be in the afternoon as well, the drivers are reporting that sometimes that they are having an issue because the bus is so crowded. So like if you're a normal, going to work or wherever you're going in the morning and you get stuck on that bus, you're having a hard time getting on and off just because it's so packed. So it'll balance that out. It also will help with the drivers and manage the load and the behaviors as well, because when they have a packed bus, it's hard to kind of see what's going on, and so dispersing the crowd will be good for them as well. And it's also safer because obviously the less distractions they have, the better, so they focus on their driving. So that is on the consent agenda for council tonight. We're tentatively looking at scheduling beginning that second semester, which I believe is January 23rd. So if council approves that, then we'll work on a contract amendment with the school district. Questions on that? Okay. And then I was going to report back. From our discussion a couple months ago with the Wisconsin Street, you'd asked for a speed study, so I gave you the results there. The police department put their trailer out there, and I really love the reports that they're able to generate. But it shows that the speeds are generally, pretty normal. They did it looks like for 2 weeks, with the average speed being about 27 miles an hour, which I would think was pretty normal for a 25-mile-an-hour road. So I really don't see anything abnormal with the report. So I think it's pretty much functioning as it's designed to. And obviously the police will continue to monitor it if there are any issues, but that was their observation as well, that they didn't see anything abnormal.
I know I made it a point to drive on Wisconsin after our meetings about parking there, and I didn't think there was any faster traffic there than other parts of the city, and I didn't see a lot of parking also. The one side that we allow parking, it wasn't like packed. So I thought the resolution on that was appropriate.
Okay, and then the other one I gave you as well. This was just, I had a resident, and it is kind of related to something recent. The Rougefield Mockingbird Way. Some of those citizens have been asking for a while about that curve. There was kind of a free-flowing curve there, but the Public Works Department actually did a project this last year that redid that intersection, so it's not a sweeping curve anymore, it's more of a traditional intersection. So at least one resident had asked, he'd said there's still some issues with speeding, so I asked the police department to do a speed study there as well, and that one is even more of a residential street, and it showed the average speed there is 22 miles an hour, so they're really, I did get back to them and say, the data doesn't say there's any problem there that needs to be addressed. So again, this one, I think some of this will get, this area there is a little bit unique as that area develops. I didn't pull it up, but anyway, if you go out there, it's kind of the area that Mockingbird Way that's developing. Eventually that road will go through to Clairville. I think once that happens, then traffic will be dispersed a little bit better. Right now there's kind of only one way into that subdivision. So my other comment was, if you're going in that area, you either live there or you're visiting someone there, so maybe talk to your neighbors in the neighborhood association if there's concerns. But I think once that road goes through to Clairville, then obviously that'll disperse some traffic as well. But again, I just put that in your packet because I wanted to give the report some light of day. It does show there really isn't an issue there as well. But that we have the ability to do speed studies one of two ways. You know, with our department, we can do them with tube counters, which we use for traffic counts. I don't think there's active. I really like these reports. They're really get to the heart of it pretty quickly. So that's all I had on those two things. Then the transit development plan update, I mentioned earlier, we're still in the midst of that. We have been meeting with the consultant on a couple of potential route modifications. We're not looking to do wholesale changes. We're just looking to maybe modify a couple of routes to make them a little better performing for a couple different reasons. So we're in the gist of looking at those alternatives and getting data to support or not. And then we have a stakeholder meeting in a couple weeks where we'll present whatever alternatives come out of these studies. So that, more to come on that. It'll be, I think it's supposed to wrap up in like April this year. So still into that. Our ridership, you got the most recent December report. Good news, the fixed route ridership is up from December this year versus last year. Year to date, it's also up about, so 23 was about 15% higher than 22, which is good. And the revenue riders are up a little bit, which is good. Go Connect, which is the intercity between the pilot between Oshkosh and Neenah, did get renewed for another year with the county. So we're looking to maybe do a couple things to help boost those numbers a little bit. Our paratransit ridership, it has been declining the last few years, and I don't know, that could be a number of reasons. I mean, it's population shifts. It's also, I think post-COVID, there were more different options that people maybe are more comfortable with. But it's still, it's only down, you know, a couple percent. So, and obviously we want people to use fixed route when they can, because that's a more cost-effective for everyone than paratransit. But we have paratransit for those people that can't use fixed route. And student ridership is down a little bit, which, again, I think that was with our past program, which has been really successful. I think the benefits to that are we've possibly eliminated some of non-students that might have been riding, and also there were some kids that were riding and just to cause problems. So I think now we've got the kids that are actually using it for the right reasons. So those are the updates I have.
Okay. Anything for future agenda items from the committee? Well, hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Need to call the roll on that, or we vote with our feet?
No. Staple,
Aye.
Armstrong,
Aye.
Erickson,
Hi.
Merritt,
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Travels home.
Yeah, right. So thanks for coming.